Bridget Gregory, a sophisticated and ambitious woman, seemed to reign supreme in the world of telemarketing, commanding a team of subordinates like a skillful conductor. Her life seemed to be permeated with affluence and confidence, but behind this shiny facade lay a web of resentment and hidden contempt. Her husband Clay, a doctor once the pride of his family, now found himself dragged into a swamp of debt, where loan sharks stalked him like predators smelling weakness. His attempts to regain financial stability led him down the slippery slope of crime, and now he's secretly negotiating the sale of stolen pharmaceutical cocaine to two suspicious individuals. Clay waited for this moment with undisguised excitement, his heart pounding like a caged bird. He realized that this deal was a dangerous game, but he saw no other way out. The meeting took place in a dark, deserted place. The atmosphere was tense. The buyers seemed calm, but there was something evil behind their masks. Everything was going according to plan until one of them, without raising his eyes from the money, abruptly drew his gun, pointing it in Clay's direction. The moment seemed like an eternity, but Clay hadn't expected this turn of events. To his surprise, however, everything turned out all right. The buyers paid him $700,000 as agreed and quickly disappeared into the night. Clay was shaken as if he had been electrocuted. He held the bag of money in his hands, which felt like both salvation and judgment. When he returned home, instead of sharing his triumph with Bridget, he slapped her. Her insults had always pissed him off, but violence was unaccustomed to him. She, on the other hand, froze with surprise for a second, but her eyes lit up with lust. This was an insult she had no intention of forgiving. She watched as Clay, oblivious to what he'd done, retreated to the bathroom to wash away the grime of the transaction. That's when she realized the moment had come. Forgetting everything, she packed lightning fast, grabbed the money that had been the catalyst for their conflict, and left the flat. She didn't look back, didn't leave behind a word or a note. She vanished like a shadow in the wind, leaving Clay alone in his soul and with a huge, gaping hole in his life. Bridget headed away from New York, heading for the suburbs of a small town called Bestwell. She called herself Wendy Croy, wanting to hide her past. Her new identity was equally ambitious and seductive. Bridget, or rather Wendy, had no intention of stopping there. She was looking for new opportunities, a new way to manipulate people and circumstances. She got a job at an insurance company, where she immediately charmed and seduced Mike Swan, a young but ambitious lawyer. She turned his head, making him feel special, when in fact he was just another pawn in her game. She used him to get ahead at work, gain access to important information, and ultimately money. Wendy and Mike began an affair that was more like a tango with measured steps where Bridget constantly changed the rules. She soon became pregnant and had a new tool of manipulation. She used the baby to bind Mike to her, who in turn was willing to do anything not to lose her. But Wendy was not what she appeared to be. She was a cold-blooded and calculating player, willing to go to any lengths to achieve her goals. She continued to hide her true identity, skillfully manipulating those around her, including Mike, who, head over heels in love, had lost his head. She used all her skills to turn the situation in her favor, playing on his feelings, making him jealous and admiring at the same time. Meanwhile, Clay, who was going crazy from losing his money and his woman, wasn't about to give up. He was stunned that his marriage had ended so quickly and so tragically. He felt betrayed and robbed, and the feeling gnawed at him from the inside out. His anger grew more and more each day. He decided to track down Bridget to get his money back and perhaps repair the relationship. He hired a private investigator to follow in her footsteps. But Bridget wasn't going to make it easy for him. She was smart, cunning, and cautious, and she fooled Clay's every attempt to find her every time. She acted like she was always one step ahead. She enjoyed the game and was willing to use all her skills to stay free and independent. Meeting her came suddenly, almost by chance. Clay had finally found her. He was furious and desperate at the same time, but she remained as calm as ice, and that infuriated him even more. She looked down on him without an ounce of pity. She was no longer the woman he knew. She had turned into a cold and ruthless predator. She had forced him to admit that his love and trust were just a weakness that she had skillfully exploited. The climax was when Mike, stunned by Wendy's cruelty, discovered her true identity, her past, and most importantly, that she had used him. He was crushed and disappointed, realizing that he had been just a puppet in her hands all along. His feelings, his faith, all turned out to be a lie. He wanted revenge. He wanted to make her pay for all the pain she had caused him. But Bridget, now again, Wendy, remained unfazed. She wasn't afraid of him. She even mocked his weakness. She was always one step ahead, predicting his every move. And then she decided that she had to get rid of him before he could hurt her. Wendy uses her cold-bloodedness and cunning to skillfully set a trap that leads to Mike's demise. She lures him to a meeting where he dies in an accident. Bridget becomes even more ruthless, willing to do anything to protect herself and her freedom. She leaves town, leaving behind a trail of pain and deceit. She disappears to an unknown destination, ready to start a new life, carrying with her the heavy weight of her cruelty and ambition. She leaves without an ounce of remorse, as if everything that happened was just a game. She was a predator, and she always will be. She left everything behind without even looking back. Her heart was as cold as ice and her mind as sharp as a razor. She was the queen of manipulation and deception. Her story is the story of a woman who used every means available to her to get her way, even if it meant betrayal. She was the epitome of cruelty and cynicism.